How's it going, guys? Jackson here with Toasty DIY, and today we're going to be doing a review of this Remington 2510 Weedeater. So this is a 16-inch curved shaft Weedeater, and it is about almost 2 years old now, I would say. I've replaced the string on it maybe twice from the original because it's not something that I use super often. I'd say I typically cut the grass every maybe one time per 2 weeks, and so that's about how often this thing gets used if I use it every time. So it hasn't been used, I would say, a ton, like obviously not commercial usage amount, but it's definitely been used quite a few times, and it has held up past the winters and springs and whatnot, and without even having any hard starts or anything so far. And part of that's just due to the lines in the carburetor not getting super gunked up yet. That's usually what causes all these small engines like Weedeaters, lawnmowers, and whatnot to stop working well, is if you just run straight ethanol, mixed gas, and you do like a 40-to-1 like you're supposed to, it's the ethanol that ends up eating the lines. It clogs things up. That's usually what causes them to go bad. And on a side note, I actually recommend trying to run this True Fuel 50-to-1 mix. It is definitely a lot more expensive than just buying straight gas from a gas station, but the biggest difference is this stuff, first of all, is 92 octane and it's filtered. It's supposed to be a very filtered fuel. It doesn't have any ethanol in it, or if it has any, it's very little. It's not like the 10% like a normal pump. This stuff's supposed to be, like off the shelf. Hey, you can leave this in your lawnmower, your Weedeater, if you happen to have a, two-stroke lawnmower, but Weedeater, leaf blower, things like that. You can leave it in there year-round, even during the winter, and it shouldn't gunk up your carburetor and whatnot, because a lot of times people do, winter prep for their small engines, and a lot of people don't for sure. And something like this can likely keep you from having to do that if you don't live in like a super cold climate, because, like I said, the biggest reason the engines die is basically just because the carburetors and the lines just get really gunked up and eaten by that ethanol fuel. So now that we're past that, I mean, first impressions on the Weedeater are, it definitely has a pretty well build quality. I mean, it's about a $100 Weedeater, I believe. I don't really know what it was when it was new, 2 years ago, but it definitely, like I said, has held up really well. Nothing is actually physically broken on it. I've never once cleaned it either. There's a lot of just gunk on it, which is why it looks pretty dirty. It has the standard primer bulb, which you have to press about 6 or 7 times. It does have like the 3-step choke and everything. You got to start off on 1, pull a couple times till it starts, then set it to 2, pull it till it starts, let it run for about 30 to 45 seconds so the engine gets warmed up. Then you put it to, full open, and then that's when you can actually use it. Spark plug's never been changed on it, but it does have a very easy to change spark plug. Just pull off this boot right here and then pull the spark plug out. The exhaust is typical spot, just comes out basically the side here, and it's covered up. So I wouldn't really say that's a problem, especially if you're using this, right-handed like most people probably would. Exhaust comes out the side, so that's really nice. Pretty decent sized fuel tank. I don't really know the exact size. It doesn't even say on here. It does say 10% ethanol max, but the fuel tank, I have about maybe, I don't know, like a 1/4 acre, and I have a lot to weed eat typically because there's just a lot of overgrown stuff. So I usually don't have to fill it up, but every maybe 5 grass cuttings. If I use this every time, for a full session, I usually only have to fill it up, maybe once a month or once every month and a half. So it is pretty nice not having to fill it up super often. It does have the bump feature, as many Weedeaters do, where you can basically bump it on the ground as you're weed eating and you'll get more line feed out. This right now I think has like a, ugly string line in it, which is pretty cheap line, or at least the stuff that I got from Lowe's. It does come with a guard and everything on it that you can change the position of, which is nice. It's a pretty small guard. But like I said, it being a 16-inch, for some people that might be kind of short. I know there's a lot of taller people out there and a lot of people that are doing this commercially that would like to have a longer shaft. So that is one thing to keep in mind. This is a pretty short one. I think 16 is about the shortest they come. So you do have to be pretty close to the ground to use it. But why don't we go ahead and actually get a demonstration of it starting and it being used. All right, so this is completely a cold start. I have not started it in about a week. So we're gonna go ahead and put it to choke. We're just gonna, I usually honestly don't even pump it the exact amount of times. I usually just do about 5 or 6, just whatever feels right. Just so you have enough fuel in the primer bulb so that you know that the carb has fuel in it. And then you're just gonna squeeze the gas about halfway or maybe all the way. And then once you get it to start on choke, it's gonna die. That's normal. You're gonna put the half choke and you usually have to pull it about 2 times. Or 4. So right now it's actually set to choke, or it's set to half choke, and I'm just going to let it run for about 30 seconds. I don't know if you guys can hear me very well, but this thing actually really does purr. For a tiny little 25cc engine, it purrs really nicely. The idle was actually pretty high on it, so I did lower it slightly. I think the screw got loosened over time, but very easy idle to adjust as well. There's just a small screw right there that you can adjust the idle with. So I mean, as you guys can see, I'm able to trim, the camera's falling. So as you guys can see, I'm able to trim, 4 or 5 inch grass at times even. I can even get stuff like, bushes and small, trees growing out of the ground, as long as they're, I would say, no thicker than, a few millimeters as far as like an actual piece of stick or wood goes. And this thing does, send rocks flying and whatnot. Like, it's definitely not a toy feeling weed eater. There are some cheaper weed eaters out there before. I've definitely used electric weed eaters, and I can say this one does have double the force of most electric weed eaters you're going to find out there. Leaf blowers go. Leaf blowers. I know this is more towards the bottom end of weed eaters as far as, possibly brands and price goes, it being under $100 at times, but like I said, this thing for the money, I mean, the fact that it's lasted, 2 years, and that I've been able to not have to do any maintenance to it so far besides adding gas and then one time changing the line out. The bump feed has always worked perfectly. The guard has always been there and worked really well. I've never had to like adjust the actual, orientation of the shaft or the actual handle even since I've put them on. Everything on this weed eater has just felt really good and sturdy since I've gotten it. And like I said, I mean, I can run it for 45 minutes at a time just to get everything done, and it does not, high idle, doesn't skip a beat, doesn't start to smoke really bad. That's another thing that's always been great, is it's never really smoked bad either, even on, cold startups and everything. So overall, I'm really impressed with this weed eater, and I haven't really had a whole lot to compare to besides maybe a couple of Craftsman models and whatnot, but for the price, I mean, I think this is probably one of the best weed eaters that you can get, depending on where you can get it, as long as you can get it at a good price. So as always, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you guys in the next one.